Islam Makhachev beat almost all the contenders, and at the moment he has no one to fight. But one fight is still possible. Khamzat Chimaev, in my opinion, this is an ideal and most important high-profile fight for Islam Makhachev, especially since they had a conflict, and the UFC will be able to promote this confrontation. Hello fighters, with you channel MMA Predictions. In this video I will give a prediction for a potential fight between Khamzat Chimaev and Islam Makhachev. But before starting this video, do not forget to subscribe to the channel and like it so that as many fans of both fighters as possible can see this video. Now, Khamzat Chimaev is the most popular fighter in the UFC. Each of his fights is awaited by many fans around the world. Recently, he was supposed to meet at the legendary numbered tournament with Nate Diaz, but due to the fact that Chimaev could not make the weight of the card, they radically changed. And as a result, Khamzat fought a category higher against the chattering Kevin Holland. You saw everything yourself. Chimaev did not leave a single chance, strangling the American in the first round. Prior to this fight, he also dominated each of his opponents. The only one who was able to compete with him was Gilbert Burns. The rest of Khamzat's rivals finished brightly in the first round, maximum in the second. Right now, Islam is on a frantic series of 12 fights in a row, and in the last fight he stopped the true featherweight champion Alexander Volkanovski, who before the fight with Islam defeated such guys as Max Holloway, Jose Aldo, Korean Zombie. In general, he calmly interrupted the entire top 5, and Makhachev defeated this fighter by decision. And now, so many fights, so much blood spilled. And finally, these fighters will be able to meet in the octagon. Whether Boers will be able to become the first champion from Chechnya or Islam will again take the belt to Dagestan, let's figure it out. I think it will be interesting for you to find out. Percussive style. Let's start with Khamzat. As you all know very well, Chimaev preaches wrestling, and in the UFC he used the stance very rarely. That's where Khamzat's skills were clearly visible, so it was in a duel against Burns. They hacked hard with the Brazilians. Chimaev showed in that fight that he had a decent stance. He holds a blow well, plus he doesn't hit badly. Khamzat is a wrestler, and almost all wrestlers have a good punch. It's not worth looking for an example for a long time. Khabib versus Conor. The second round, a hard right overhand hit exactly the Irishman's jaw, and he knocked down for the first time in his career. Chimaev has the same style. He has many fights where he was able to knock out his opponent. Gerard Meerschaert felt all the Chechen strength of the Greyhound, and Aliskerov was unlucky. He was also able to feel the strong punch Greyhound. In the fight against Makhachev, the striking force can help him, since the Dagestani is experiencing problems with his jaw. He has been knocked down more than once. Adriano Martins, Davi Ramos were able to knock Islam down, and given the strength of the Greyhound, he is also quite capable of catching Makhachev and dropping him. Now let's move on to the striking technique of Islam. Since his debut in the main promotion of the world, he has greatly added in this aspect, which is worth the fact that he was able to knock Oliveira down. And Charles is not a weak puncher. I have already listed who he killed in his arms. Islam, under the leadership of Khabib and his coach Javier, is making great strides. Yes, maybe he is not as fast as his future opponent. Maybe he does not have elbows in his arsenal, high kicks, so he does not need it. As soon as the opportunity arises, Makhachev will hit. As you know, Islam is a very neat fighter, and it's not easy to hit him. That's just what I think. But what if Chimaev tries to finish Islam in the first round and goes like a tank to his opponent? Islam will endure all this and begin his more powerful attack. This option also takes place. I will choose Islam as the favorite in this aspect. Due to a calmer style, he can outbox Khamzat. Struggle. Now let's move on to the main component of this battle. Without it, as they say, nowhere. Let's start with Islam, which only conducts its fights in this way, pressing, then a clinch near the cage and an amplitude throw, after which it is problematic to rise. Now in the lightweight division, I don't see such a fighter who could rebuff Islam in this discipline. The maximum I considered a threat was Charles Oliver, but you yourself remember how it all ended then. Islam destroyed him in the fight without leaving a single chance of survival. Islam, in addition to his skills, has physical strength. Look at him. He is a really healthy man, and in most of his fights he is 2 or even 3 times larger than his opponents. But in this fight they will be approximately equal, since the Adaman is also not a small lightweight. Whether he will be able to translate Chimaev, I think yes, without a doubt he can. It all depends on the preparation of Raphael, but we will talk about this a little later. So now let's move on to the wrestling skills of Khamzat Chimaev, and everything there is also at a high level. From early childhood, he performed and won major competitions. He also rebuilt his freestyle wrestling skills in MMA. Thereby he dominates every fighter with whom he is put. As soon as he got into the UFC, in the fight he had no equal. Translation and hard ground and pound. This is how his fights ended until he met with the representatives of the top 5 Gilbert Burns. That evening, after the first round, Chimaev realized that it was dangerous to work in wrestling and therefore switched to the rack. But in the next battle, he again got the drummer, whom he easily translated and strangled. While it's too early to talk about wrestling skills, he should test his wrestling style with a good wrestler. Opponents such as Kamaru Usman or Colby Covington are ideal. I will choose Islam as the favorites again, as his performance experience surpasses Khamzat Chimaev. Stamina and spirit. What can be said about cardio? Khamzat only once passed a 3-round distance and then showed himself not in the best way. At the end of the third, in a duel with Burns, he somehow kept his hands, and the fight with Makhachev will be 100% held in the main event of the numbered tournament. And, of course, the rules of the fight will be 5 by 5. I don't know what a greyhound needs to do to reach the end of the 5th round and at the same time feel comfortable. In such a short time, he is unlikely to be able to change anything, only if he joins some famous coach. Now let's talk about Makhachev's endurance, and here, too, everything is fine. But everything is exactly what really scares me. In his entire career, he has not yet reached the 5th round. The maximum is 4 in a duel against Thiago Moises, and he finished the rest of his fights ahead of schedule. In general, both fighters in this comparison leave big questions. If you choose a favorite, then I will believe more in Makhachev due to his calm pace. I think he will be able to reach the final gong without asking for help from an oxygen mask. As for the spirit, here I will put equality. Both are 2 equally charged fighters who are ready to destroy for the sake of the belt. None of them gave back and will not give in this battle. Forecast. I think that Islam Makhachev will win this fight, and most likely he will win ahead of schedule, since his experience of performances will be superior. The future of fighters. After the victory, Islam will try to win the welterweight belt. I don't see any other options, and Chimaev will continue to perform as well. He will look for high-profile fights.